games alive! Now, you probably don't need a refresher on what Video Games Live is, but I'm gonna give you one anyway. It's an ongoing concert series that specializes in playing music from video games with a full-blown orchestra. Well, that's what it is to most people. For some reason, it gets lost in translation that Live isn't just an orchestral showing of video game music, but something of a rock concert, and visual feast for the eyes as well. In other words, this is not your proper classical music concert, and it doesn't want to be. Tommy Tallarico, the ringmaster behind all this hoopla, has repeatedly said that their aim is to be something different. They want their concerts to be more exciting and frenetic, so that even when the orchestra plays, the rock concert-like energy remains intact. I'm fine with the approach. I mean, who am I, Emilio Esteban? And I feel the entire realm of classical music could learn a thing or two from them. But like all things, there's room for improvement, and I often feel that the rock concert energy, laser light show, and overall production, while being qualities that help them stand out, are also the things holding them back. And Video Games Live Level 4 is a big example of this. Although not their worst album, that would be 3, and certainly not a waste of time, it leaves me feeling uneasy. Not just for the fate of Video Games Live, but the entire field of music composition within the gaming sphere. I've witnessed a few criticisms over time, marking that Live feels like a poor man's concert, or that it straight up doesn't give good performances. It doesn't help that their style, often a compendium of everything the sophisticated auteur scoffs at, gives strength to the incorrect impression that adapting video game music to orchestras is just something of a recent fad or novelty. Video Games Live is not something I should be the one to defend, because I'm always skeptical about things like electric guitars and an audience that won't shut up, but I'm going to defend it in saying that while I may not like Video Games Live's approach, it is different, it is still enjoyable, and to be both of those things is commendable and very much needed. Now that heavier, more symphonic approaches to video game music have started to appear, Live has looked increasingly tame by comparison, but I don't think it's inferior, and I applaud that they haven't changed a step simply to cater into what others are doing.
Having said that, I do have some thoughts.
Level 4 shows both the struggle of their concerts and albums to some extent, though on the outset it starts out somewhat promising. The first track is a medley for Donkey Kong Country. This is a franchise that no one can get the music right to, despite my firm belief you can make an entire concert based solely around the music of this title, and the performance shows why, combining an array of odd elements and genres that blend so organically you won't even notice the stark differences. From its goofy, cartoonish barbarisms to its use of serene ethnic jazz, and even swing, Donkey Kong Country really gets your imagination rolling. Even a beautiful use of synthesizer. So good. The problem is that it's too hurried. It's not that they're playing too fast, but it's rushed. The notes don't get to bounce and ricochet the way they need to. It feels very streamlined that you just can't get into it the way you should. This has long been a problem for them. So eager they are to go through a huge variety of different pieces that most just don't get the time they need to impress you.
Yeah, let's just shortcut through Simian Segway. I'm tired of this crap.
Next is League of Legends. It's fine. Won't be your Venus, light your fire, or desire. But it's interesting when the chorus appears, I guess. Then there's the Final Fantasy Opera Remix. This is a bad remix of a bad piece. I'm sorry. Take the one good thing about it out and replace it with a weird use of synth as some kind of electronic tech beat in the background. I suppose what they were going for was to make it sound very relaxing, but just sounds cheap instead. If you ever wanted to know what an opera would sound like at your local strip mall, this is the piece for you. Every time Live gets experimental, I'm not usually enjoying it, but hey, they take risks. By track 4, it's Cave Story, and at this point it's like, oh my gosh, something's happening. It's not as great as it could be, but it's still solid. Cave Story's sportive and whistle-friendly melodies are captured nicely here. Live is arguably at its best when adapting some form of bit music into a performance by live instruments. That's really what put them on the map before any of the showiness, and I don't know if they quite realize that. Live is a great platform for stuff like this, and the reason they don't have as much impact on some of their albums compared to others is because a significant amount for music is already in an orchestral style performed by live instruments. It just feels redundant to have the likes of Resident Evil, Uncharted, League, Creed, Warcraft, etc. on there because we've heard them in their respective titles already, and most of the time you can listen to these pieces uninterrupted. In a concert, I'm sure it's great fun. For an album, I think I gotta take a nap or something. Anyway, the problem with this approach is that for any one concert or album, you might have too many pieces that just don't hold the same weight as others. For instance, it was after Cave Story where it became readily apparent to me that the blame for Level 4's waning excitement was maybe only half on them. Warcraft, Uncharted, Creed, and the like are games that to some degree strive for a more cinematic approach, and the music reflects that. This isn't a bad thing, but there's a reason DKC and Cave Story stick out like sore thumbs here, not just because their lightheartedness comes as a staggering relief to the rigid, stern melodrama of most other tracks, provided usually by an up-tempo use of low serious strings and smoky choir, but because they're not trying to be something else. DKC and Cave Story's music feel like something very much their own, with their own story and adventure to tell, but the likes of other material simply feels as though it's replicating stuff I've heard before. Uncharted and Creed have a stoic drive to them, but Man to Man did it better. League of Legends and Warcraft are a fun exercise in dynamics, but Legend of the Seeker, Xena, not bad, just not bursting with originality or brimming with color. Black Flag is just color-washed music. I can't believe it's the main theme. It sounds like something that should play during a suspenseful chase, and maybe that's the point, but it feels just kind of lifeless. It just comes and goes. I can see it being interesting from an instrumental aspect, but it's just predictable. Going back to League, there's no real enthusiasm there either, because you know where it's going. It's not that music with the sound of the theater is inherently wrong, but neither of these two can even hold a candle to the likes of Outcast or Heart of Darkness, which do manage to sound original and tie into their material. As is seemingly tradition now, we've got another piece from World of Warcraft in Magnificent Desolation. I usually make fun of the Warcraft fans a lot, usually because every time I read or watch something about its music, there is always a sentence along the lines of, "Your fans have been quite taken with it, giving their praise and accolade," which is fine. It's just don't go thinking I'm going to put any of its music on the same plateau as the fans do, or we're going to have a problem. Fault me if you will by saying I don't exactly put the Warcraft community on quite the same level as others when it comes to heeding their praise. I'm not even saying they're wrong. They probably do hear a lot of good music.
You'll just never admit the ingenuity of Warcraft, Seth. Come on, you have to admit this one's pretty good, eh?
Sure I do. It's nice. It reminds me a lot of the Andante from Carl Nielsen's Second Symphony, The Four Temperaments.
That's not fair, Seth.
Bring me my Mountain Dew. Just the way I like it. Terrible. Winds of Madness is a solid piece, and Wataru Hokoyama, an unjustly overlooked composer, had a hand in composing it, and it hears like it. The encompassing brass cackles and stretches like violent tendrils, causing plenty of fancy and exciting leaps from the string section. I wouldn't expect any less from the creator of crafty pieces such as Spiritual Planet or Nebula, but this is a 2-minute piece that loops, and instead of adding something to it, Video Games Live just repeats it after the initial 2 minutes are done. For an album, it's lazy. For a concert, it's straight up awkward. 20 to 30 seconds of new material just to separate it would have gone a long way. Yes, it loops in the game, but that's the game. It was designed that way. I feel most other concerts of Live's ilk would have done something to make it a more concert-friendly piece. There's also plenty of other pieces from this franchise better suited for a concert, so while I should be happy to see Madness here, it really didn't get what it needed.
You ever get the feeling you're expendable?
Video Games Live Level 4 at its best is like a party that won't stop. At its worst, it's when you realize the party is just you dressed silly in a hall of mirrors. You feel like you've been here before, but not in a good, nostalgia-y way. More like a, it's only me, I want to be free of me kind of way. Even for the things I like, there's something done that ends up irking me. It's a challenge to make these albums and run a concert pretty much simultaneously. I get that. But people are starting to talk, and I feel I'm obligated to speak up about it. Nobody else will. I didn't want to be the bad guy.
Then start reconciling, son. What can they do to fix this?
Well, to be fair, it's not all stormy clouds. They are getting better. Level 5 shows huge improvement. But to make sure they stay on track, I think all Video Games Live needs to do is keep being their thing, but to not let that interfere with their own approach.
What?
Yeah, it may not be a symphonic concert exactly, but that doesn't mean you need to blitz through DK so you can sing Zelda's Lullaby, which for the record isn't a lullaby if you're going to suddenly kick up the tempo and pitch. Rock-a-bye, baby, on the treetop! C doesn't work. 2 stars out of 5, and my MVP pick is Cave Story.
Oh, you just hate Video Games Live and everything it stands for, Seth. You're a non-believer.
What? Look, if you want the album, go and get it. Just because I give it a bad score doesn't even mean I don't recommend it. It still has some worthwhile fun. Also, these things are rare, and I'd like Video Games Live to be around forever. I mean, I like all of these game concerts, and I love just having the privilege to hear them. I've had to witness some go or fail to be, and that makes me sad. I mean, at least they're not VGO. That would be bad. I almost wonder if maybe they have anything to do with Live being stretched a bit thin, since the two are connected by Tallarico's name. Last I heard, VGO was performing a Capcom-themed concert, and no! Don't you dare put rock guitar in my Okami. No. Don't do it. It won't make sense, no matter how hard you try. So as far as improvements, let's recap. Show more independent or retro niche games that others love. There's still so much material out there from the indie scene and plenty of old video games that I think people would love to hear. So long as you have some big names next to you, I don't think anyone who buys an album or visits your concert will be annoyed by something they don't recognize. And the games from this category are honestly some of the best music-wise. Lufia, hint. Tallarico has a backlog of some interesting music himself. Why not perform one of those? Second, no more bare minimum arrangements. I feel like a jerk saying that, but I feel like even more of a jerk having to sit through a Naked Winds of Madness or a rushed, oversaturated DKC. These are good pieces, performed well, but let down by their approach. I can't enjoy Simeon's segue, it's gone already. Thirdly, less experiments? Look, it helps that I'm not a song guy, but too many of their riskier projects hardly end up that great and hardly use the orchestra they advertise in a compelling way, if at all. They'll keep doing these, I'm sure, but make them count if you do. It just seems odd when you have the orchestra taking a back seat so often. Fourthly, ease it up on some of the bigger names. I know Tallarico likes to represent every franchise he can, and I applaud that. But music from the latest AAA games doesn't make a concert any more enticing, at least for the average schmo like me. That stuff will always be around, but there are plenty of pieces that have been neglected for too long, or will never get the funding they need, or simply deserve a moment in the spotlight. And so long as Live remains committed to adapting this music and improve in terms of arranging it and letting it breathe, they remain a perfect candidate for changing that. It takes so much just to get something commissioned, let alone performed and published. There's an ancient phrase passed down from Moses to Cyndi Lauper. Girls just want to have fun, and there's music out there that simply wants to do that too. And I know that that's a very scary thing to say in an era where contemporary pop tries to murder the very notion of it and bury it in salt. A part of me has so often died on the inside at the sight and sound of some youngster playing an Ed Sheeran solo on their oboe that it's a wonder I even find the strength to go on. But Live, at its best, and not when it's forcing a guitar in a piece that doesn't need it, or showing that, hey, the cellist can rock out too.
Now that my kid sees that, he's going to choose to be a cellist, because now he thinks a cellist can be just as cool as an electric guitarist, and I'm going to stand up for that, because that's just inspiring life. That's what life is all about. I live a very simple life.
Ooh, you hate to see that. Is at its best when proving you can still have fun without sacrificing smarts. I mean, look at that recent Turrican album. It's cinematic and has high energy, and it's still immensely creative and enjoyable. You can still have some flash without forgetting the gravity of what you're playing, and hopefully stumble into a more thoughtful camaraderie that you don't see in most concerts of any genre, where you usually have either just airheads or distant snobs, and I like to think that maybe Live has a chance to find a middle ground. That said, level 4 gets 2 stars, and I still have to review level 3 because Sista, it has it coming. But 5's good, so, go and get that. Get all of them. I don't know. Do whatever you want.